just made it up as we went along. I don't know about making a point, but I'll tell you, he brought a new kind of violence to the screen. It was the first time that you ever saw a bullet.
Ernest Borgnine, it turns out, has been harboring a deep hatred for years. Who is that person? Frank Sinatra comes to mind. Beneath the glitz and glamour of fame and acclaim, Ernest Borgnine carries within him a soldier's past. So did his years in the military shape him, or were they the source of the pure hatred he kept hidden for so long? Looking for answers, a military past. Born in the small town of Hamden, Connecticut on January 24, 1917, Ernest Borgnine, born Ernest Ephraim Borgnino, embarked on a journey that few expected would take him from the decks of battleships to the glittering spotlight of Hollywood. Raised in a family of Italian immigrants, his childhood was a combination of strict discipline and tenacity, qualities that would become the foundation for both his military and film careers. After graduating from high school in 1935, amid the Great Depression and with the world on the brink of war, Borgnine decided to join the United States Navy, a decision he once called the best thing I ever did in my life. During his first tour of duty, he was assigned to the destroyer USS Lamberton DD 1119, where he learned discipline, teamwork, and perseverance in the harsh conditions of the ocean. In October 1941, he was honorably discharged, but less than 2 months later, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Without hesitation, Borgnine re-enlisted. During World War II, he served aboard the USS Sylph PY-12, a private yacht converted for patrol and anti-submarine warfare missions along the east coast of the United States. The job required not only extreme vigilance, but also great danger, as his ship faced the very real threat of depth charges, mines, and surprise attacks. During nearly a decade of service, Borgnine rose from the rank of junior seaman to gunnery first class, a prestigious rank responsible for directing the guns of warships. He received numerous medals for his service, including the American Campaign Medal, the Good Conduct Medal, and the World War II Victory Medal. His years in the military not only shaped his character, but also quietly nurtured a sense of bravery and righteousness, an element that would later be reflected in his choice of roles. After the war, Borgnine returned home uncertain about his future. It was a confusing transition for millions of American veterans at the time, and Borgnine was no exception. It was during this time that his mother, who had always believed in her son's comedic potential and expressiveness, gave him a piece of advice that would prove pivotal. "You've always loved being in front of people and being a clown. Why don't you try acting?" Inspired by this advice, Borgnine took advantage of the GI Bill, a veterans education program, to attend the Randall School of Dramatic Arts in Hartford. Although he only studied for 6 months, he showed exceptional talent and was quickly accepted into the Barter Theater in Virginia, a renowned stage for budding actors. Here, he began working behind the scenes, acting as a technical assistant and scene changer, a period he once described as a real school of acting. Gradually, he was given supporting roles, then leading roles in many plays, marking his transformation from soldier to artist. In 1951, Borgnine made his film debut in the film China Corsair, and just 2 years later, he made a strong impression as Sergeant Fatso Judson in From Here to Eternity, a brutal, cold character who was the opposite of Montgomery Clift's lead role. His performance sent shivers down audiences' spines, and directors began to take notice of his powerful, uncompromising style. In 1955, he made his big break as Marty Paletti, a single butcher in the Bronx with a kind heart in the film Marty. The sincerity and pathos of this role helped him beat out such notables as James Dean, Frank Sinatra, Spencer Tracy, and James Cagney to win the Academy Award for Best Actor. The film also won 3 other Oscars, including Best Picture, cementing Borgnine's place as a talent not to be underestimated. His career continued to flourish when, in 1962, Borgnine signed a contract with Universal Studios to play Lieutenant Commander Quentin McHale in the comedy series McHale's Navy. As a humorous, friendly, yet sharp and intelligent PT boat captain, Borgnine captured the hearts of viewers throughout his 4-season run. The then Secretary of the Navy, John Warner, even personally thanked him, calling him the greatest recruiter the Navy ever had. Borgnine later recalled that many young people joined the Navy simply because they wanted to be a member of the McHale Navy. Despite his rise to fame, Borgnine never forgot his roots. He remained involved in community activities related to veterans and military appreciation programs, always emphasizing that it was his service that made him who he was. In 2004, he was awarded the honorary rank of Senior Petty Officer from the United States Navy Memorial, an honor he considers more meaningful than any award from Hollywood. But could that discipline have something to do with a grudge he's kept hidden for decades? The answer will soon be revealed. The man he couldn't stand. During his more than half-century career in Hollywood, Ernest Borgnine was loved by the public for his openness, charming humor, and man-of-the-people demeanor. His round face with a wide smile and bright eyes always made him a beloved icon in the hearts of audiences. But behind that appearance, those close to him, especially his colleagues and film crew members, always knew something he never spoke about publicly: a cold, decades-long feud with an equally great figure. Frank Sinatra, Borgnine, and Sinatra first worked together on the 1953 classic From Here to Eternity. Borgnine played the brutal Sergeant Fatso Judson, while Sinatra played the diminutive underdog soldier Maggio. The relationship between the two characters was one of tension, and by many accounts, that tension extended beyond the screen. At first, things seemed to go smoothly, but as filming progressed, friction began to surface. Production assistants recalled that the two men often refused to look at each other during crew lunches. On one occasion, Borgnine reportedly walked out of a crew meeting because Sinatra was in the room. From there, their rivalry became a word of mouth, quiet but clear. Both men had strong personalities and made no secret of their opinions. Borgnine, a former Marine, was strict and disciplined and saw acting as a craft that required dedication. He worked seriously, prepared carefully for his roles, and hated sloppiness. Sinatra, a versatile and spontaneous artist, was different. He entered his roles instinctively, confident in his natural charisma, and rarely adhered to technical standards. Borgnine once told a close colleague, "Frank thinks he can just show up and the film will be good. He doesn't understand the sacrifices this profession requires." It wasn't just his work ethic. Sinatra's lavish lifestyle, parties, and tumultuous relationships that annoyed Borgnine. As a private person who maintained traditional values and respected privacy, Borgnine felt that Sinatra embodied everything he could not accept. There is also a theory that the feud was motivated by professional jealousy. Sinatra won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in 1954 for his role as Maggio in From Here to Eternity, exactly 1 year before Borgnine won for Marty, 1955. Although both men were honored, rumors circulated within Hollywood circles at the time that Sinatra had once denigrated Borgnine's uncouth acting at a private party, calling him a military actor, implying he was dry and unsophisticated. Although never confirmed publicly, those close to Borgnine said he never forgot those words. After From Here to Eternity, there were no further collaborations between the two, despite being offered several projects. Producers said that just hearing the other's name appear on a casting list would cause both to react negatively. At major events like the Oscars, Golden Globes, or industry parties, personal assistants made sure they weren't seated close together.
A story told by Tim Conway, Borgnine's close friend and longtime co-star in McHale's Navy, is that whenever someone accidentally mentioned Sinatra, Borgnine's face would darken.
Once backstage at a television taping, a young staffer innocently asked, "Did you ever sing like Sinatra?" Borgnine said nothing, just stood up and walked away. Strangely, Borgnine never publicly criticized Sinatra throughout his career. But it was that long silence that made many people believe that this feud was real. When Sinatra died in 1998, Borgnine didn't make any statements. Some close friends said that he respected the talent but never forgave the man. Perhaps, for Borgnine, the greatest hurt came not from a role being stolen or an award being overshadowed, but from being slighted, being unfairly judged by a colleague he once respected. But were personality and work ethic differences enough to make Ernest Borgnine harbor a grudge against Frank Sinatra for decades? Or were there real conflicts behind the scenes, things only those who were present at the theater witnessed? Let's delve into some of the lesser-known events to understand what happened. Behind the scenes. Behind Ernest Borgnine's friendly exterior and infectious smile are the tense and complicated backstage memories, where professionalism, pride, and personal conflicts shaped his long and illustrious career. Over the decades, Borgnine has worked with a host of Hollywood legends, from those who left a lasting impression on him to those whose mere mention of their names would make him lose his ever-present smile. One of the most special relationships was with Tim Conway, his co-star in the naval comedy series McHale's Navy. They not only had great chemistry on screen, but also became close friends off-screen. After the death of Katie Girardo, Borgnine's wife, who had been deeply attached to her, Conway became a spiritual support, sharing both laughter and loneliness. Conway once shared, "Ernie has no limits." When you look at his career, from a violent thug like Fatso Judson to a shy guy like Marty, he brings the same depth and subtlety to it. However, not everyone was comfortable with Borgnine. The first day Gene Hackman stepped onto the set of the Poseidon Adventure, he left everyone confused. When Borgnine gestured and waited for his lines, Hackman just looked confused and asked, "Do I have to say something?" Hackman had just finished filming The French Connection, a film that heavily relied on improvisation and had no lines prepared. Borgnine, who was strict and methodical, could not hide his annoyance. It was a typical example of the differences in approach to his work that he often encountered and sometimes did not tolerate. The tension escalated when he worked with Shelley Winters, who was known for her forceful personality. In the Poseidon Adventure, Winters brought a 20-page character bio that he had written himself and insisted on editing the script, even demanding that he do his stunts despite being 51 years old. One underwater scene, which lasted 14 hours and required 65 retakes, pushed the crew, especially Borgnine, to their limits. And then there was Spencer Tracy, a cinematic icon, but for Borgnine a nightmare. In Bad Day at Black Rock, Tracy frequently changed his lines and improvised, leaving his co-stars unable to react. One time, Tracy looked Borgnine straight in the eye and uttered a suggestive line. Not only was he wrong in his loudest voice. While it may have been an act, Borgnine was deeply hurt. Interestingly, it was Tracy, after that tense confrontation, who recommended Borgnine for the role of Marty. The role not only won him the Oscar for Best Actor, but also cemented his place in Hollywood history. Perhaps, amid that harshness, a quiet respect developed between the two men. There were also memories Borgnine probably never wanted to remember, like the time he witnessed a fight between Joan Crawford and Mercedes McCambridge on the set of Johnny Guitar. In one horrifying scene, Crawford, already known for her bad temper, threw McCambridge's entire wardrobe into the middle of the freeway. The two hated each other so much that all scenes had to be shot separately, with absolutely no room for them to be in the same frame. On September 3, after a heated argument, the two actresses got into a fistfight in front of the entire crew. Borgnine and Sterling Hayden had to step in to separate the two lions in the middle of a fight. And then, one day after a bad take, Crawford threw a cup of hot coffee in a production assistant's face, causing second-degree burns. Borgnine, despite witnessing countless bizarre things, still had to exclaim, working with her was like walking on eggshells while juggling dynamite. All those experiences, from joy to anger, from respect to unspoken hatred, shaped Ernest Borgnine into a sharp-edged man. The intense backstage experiences weren't just fleeting moments. For Ernest Borgnine, some of the riffs ran so deep that they changed the way he viewed his colleagues, chose roles, and behaved for the rest of his life. But which feuds exactly left the deepest mark on him? And why did Borgnine, normally generous and easygoing, harbor such unquenchable hatred for one man in particular? It's here that the story becomes all the more personal. Confession at 8. The long-standing tension with Frank Sinatra was more than just a backstage anecdote. It was a quiet, simmering rift that dominated many aspects of Ernest Borgnine's life and career, especially during his final decades in Hollywood. What began as a clash of work styles and personal identities between the two stars grew into an irreconcilable chasm that overshadowed his career choices, personal relationships, and even the way Borgnine saw himself and those around him. At first, Borgnine rarely spoke about the feud. He was a man of a strong work ethic and generally avoided public displays of his internal conflicts. But as he grew older, especially after his 80s, he became more open. In a 2008 interview, when asked about people he found difficult to work with, Borgnine simply replied with a cryptic line: "Some bridges burn themselves. Others you burn because you want to see the other side better." Although he did not name names, insiders and those close to him knew he was referring to Sinatra. Borgnine never directly criticized Frank Sinatra in the media, but he did not hide the change in his choice of projects after those bad experiences. In later years, he avoided big movies with strong stars and often only accepted when he was sure there were no stress factors on the set. Ernie was not afraid of conflict, but after Sinatra, he chose peace. A close friend once recalled, "The story did not stop at work." Borgnine's off-screen persona, usually cheerful and playful, also became pensive when talking about the past. His third wife, Tova Tresnes, once said, "Ernie carried his old wounds gracefully. He never talked about them much, but I knew they were still wounds." The conflict with Sinatra also deepened Borgnine's attachment to the military ideals he had served in the U.S. Navy. For him, the military was a place where loyalty, discipline, and mutual respect were paramount, something he felt was lacking in some Hollywood workplaces. His late-life interviews often returned to his memories of the Navy as a way to reaffirm his values and the work ethic he remained loyal to. And instead of letting his anger consume him, Borgnine channeled that energy into philanthropy. He devoted his time to veterans programs, campaigned for mental health for soldiers, and became an unofficial spokesman for the generation of artists who had served their country. Career-wise, he prioritized projects with a friendly work environment. More than once, he turned down highly regarded scripts simply because he felt he didn't trust the production team. Instead, he chose films where he could work with close friends like Tim Conway, Lee Marvin, and his former colleagues from McHale's Navy. "At my age," he once told a young director, "life is too short to spend time with difficult people. I do my work for the people, not just the scripts." When asked about the people who had hurt him in an interview on his 90th birthday, Borgnine smiled and said simply, "I've outlived most of them." It was not a sarcastic retort, but a testament to the power of patience and professional discipline. Though he never openly hated anyone, his hatred of a man who everyone knew was someone, so to speak, shaped Ernest Borgnine's philosophy, his behavior, and his legacy in ways few expected. Do you think Ernest Borgnine was right to keep quiet about his feud with Frank Sinatra throughout his career, or should he have gone public to free himself? Would you have chosen to forgive and move on like he did, or confront and come clean? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting updates. Thank you and see you in the next video.